November 121 Mike, your current taxi 111.
Hi, I'm Mike Thompson, and welcome to 121 Point Mike Ground School. This video continues the IFR series, and I'm going to be talking about IFR charts. I covered the approach plates already, and I believe that that's the most interesting part of instrument flight because, well, getting where you want to go when it's below VFR is kind of what it's all about, right? However, you have to know how to get to the approach in the first place, and that is what the enroute segment's all about. Low altitude enroute charts are kind of what I'm going to explain here. You need to know how to interpret these, of course, for your test, instrument check rides, and flying in real life. Low altitude charts cover things up to 17,999 feet. Once you hit 18,000 or flight level 180, you use the high charts and then you're in Class A airspace, and absolutely on an IFR flight plan. So low enroute charts are for flights below 18,000. Let's pop over to my favorite navigation website, SkyVector, and I'll explain the symbols that you're most likely to see on your journeys and on your tests. Open it up here and I'm looking at the Omaha area. Now I've got World Low selected. Up here you can choose your different types of charts you want to look at. But the first thing you might notice when you look at low enroute charts is they're ridiculously boring compared to the VFR charts. The sectional charts just have a lot more color and stuff, but when you're flying on instruments, you know, the land features don't really matter so much. So, I imagine the first thing you want to know when you're looking at these charts, you know, what are the airports? Well, the airports are all these little circles right here. All these little green things are airports. Now, there's three different colors of airports. There's blue, green, and brown. You can see over here, there's a brown one right there. The colors mean something, okay? Blue airports, like if we look here at Lincoln right there inside this Class C airspace, this blue one here, the blue ones are the high altitude DOD approaches and radar minima are published for the blue airports, okay? So they have, yes, published approach procedures and things that you can use. And then there's the green ones. They also have published approaches. Their instrument approaches or radar minimums are published in the TERPs or the FLIPs. TERPs are the terminal procedures, like the approach plates and things. Those are all downloadable on the FAA website. Now, if there's brown airports, they have no published instrument approaches. But a lot of them are still going to appear on these instrument charts because, you know, it may be relevant for emergencies and things. So if you're flying on instruments and plan to do an approach, you're looking for the blue and the green airports. There are far more green ones than there are blue ones. If we go back over here to Omaha, we can see that up here, Epley is green. It's got these little tick marks around it, right? Because it's got fuel, it's a civil airport. The ones you want to avoid, though, are the ones that are just these two rings, right? That's off at Air Force Base. The military airports are just the two circles. So we're not going to land there unless it's an absolute emergency, and then you have some splaining to do when you do. Each airport, of course, is going to have an info box, like over here at Millard. I've landed there. These read a lot like the ones on these sectional charts from the VFR videos that I called VFR maps. Here you've got the city, Omaha. Millard is the name of the airport. Here's its airport identifier. And of course, you'll jam a K in front of this because it's a U.S. airport on the mainland. Here is the field elevation, 1051. Lighting here, there's several different lighting symbols. The circle indicates that this one's going to have pilot-controlled lighting. The 38 is the length of the longest runway. Millard only has one. And it's rounded up. 70 is the dividing line, so it's kind of silly, but it's in hundreds of feet. So it's at least 3771 or 3770 long. So it's 3,800 feet long. This tells you what kind of weather information is available. It's an AWOS 3 system. And AWOS, I think I covered this back in the ATIS video too. It's Automated Weather Observation System. And then the 3 denotes what kind of things are available. And here you can get the AWOS on 118.25. You use this, of course, to get the weather in this area. Millard is uncontrolled. You know this because it doesn't have any airspace depicted around it. Nor does it have a little D inside of a square. You can see here, this Omaha Epley, OMA, is a Class C, as denoted by the blue right here with the dash line. A blue dash around here means it's Class C, and you know the upper shelf goes way out to here. You can also tell that it's Class C because, well, there's a C in this box right here. Offutt Air Force Base is also a Class C, should you decide to not land there, but it's denoted with a C as well. If you see an airport with a control tower, right, but that's not Class C, that's going to be Class D. And this box will say D instead of C, but there won't be any blue haze around it. We can go across the way over here to Des Moines International. You can see that's also a Class C. Let's go southeast here to Kansas City. Here you can see this one is a solid blue line around it, which means it's Class Bravo, Class B airspace. And it's a much bigger circle than the Class C was. So that's how you tell the different airspace classes. Let's go here to Wheeler Downtown. Now that one doesn't show. This one is Class D, but it doesn't say so. It may be a map glitch. Let's check here. If we go to enroute, nope, that one just doesn't say because it's too close to Kansas City, so they decluttered it. What SkyVector has done is that they've had to stitch the charts together, and so occasionally you'll see little glitches in it, like right here. There's an info box that's missing. So if we want to see what's in that, we'll have to check the enroute L12, and we find out this is the Offutt TACAN box right here for their navigation system, which is meaningless really to us civil pilots. We go to enroute L10. That's still the same thing. So we're going to go back to world low. But, so each airport's got its info box. We've covered that. For instance, here at Epley, here's the identifier, OMA, right? Because it's in Omaha, that kind of makes sense. They try to make the identifiers make sense. It's Class C. The field elevation's 985. This one has regular lighting. It's not going to be pilot controlled, right? Because we're a Class C airspace. The longest runway is 9,500. This little A means that ATIS is available on 120.4. You use this to get your weather and other terminal information. Now, one thing you will not see on here that you will see on the sectional charts are the tower and approach control frequencies. Let's go to a VFR chart here and look. It says here, right, this is the approach control, 124.5, if you're coming into Omaha from the east. Actually, that is their, oh no, here's Omaha. If you're coming in from this direction, it's 120.1. Here, you're going to see the approach control frequency. If we go back to this map, or chart, excuse me, still a map. If you go back here, you're not going to see any approach control frequencies listed because you're already going to be talking to center en route or approach control if you're staying in the area. And so you don't need to know what they are on the charts because the controllers that are controlling you, well, I'm putting control in air quotes, they're going to tell you what frequencies you need. But you will find center frequencies. So like right over here, right? We're on Minneapolis Center, and here's the frequency that you'll call them up on if you're in this zone, you know, out here. So in these little blue sawtooth, I guess these are, I don't know, a dental molding, I suppose. In those boxes spread around, you will see the center frequency. Still on Minneapolis Center, which we're talking to Omaha here on 119.6. Remember that we civil pilots, our comm frequencies start with a 1. We can ignore the other ones. Those are for people going to fly into Offutt Air Force Base in this case. Because they're on the UHF. We civil pilots use the VHF. Over here at O'Neill, still on Minneapolis Center, we're talking on 128.0. Okay, so that's kind of the airspaces and things. Oh, well, if you notice, there's all these brown ones all around here, right? These brown hash marks are MOAs. The name for it is right here. Crypt. This is Crypt South. This is Crypt Central, you know, and Crypt North. So those are basic airspaces on your instrument charts. If we look at the nav aids, we can go over here. We can go back to Omaha. This is a Vortac. This one is a TACAN, right? It doesn't have the little hexagon that's shown here with the black tips. So this one is a civil and military combined. It is the Omaha VORTAC. Its frequency, of course, is 116.3. Here's its identifier, DME channel 110. This is the Morse code identifier here. Lat long coordinates, should you care. And this box down below, if you've seen the VFR Charts video, you know this is the name of the remote communications outlet for flight service in that area. The frequency for that is 122.1. However, this little R indicates that it's a receive only, which means they're only receiving on this. They're not going to talk back to you on this frequency. If you want to talk back to them in this area, then you're going to need to tune into the VORTAC frequency and listen over that. Here's a bunch of remote communications outlets boxes. Columbus, right? So you're going to call these up, say Columbus Radio, Cessna 121 mic on 122.6. When you're addressing flight service, you say the name of the service station and then radio. Their call sign is radio. I don't know why, but that's what they've decided. And it's repeated here again. So if you're in this zone, you're going to use 122.6. We can find lots of other flight service stations around here, I'm sure. Here's Columbus again, tied to this VOR DME, right? VOR DME symbol is a hexagon surrounded by a square. The military doesn't use this one. That's just a VOR DME. Columbus radio on 122.2. And then you'll eventually get back to you on this one. But this one can go two ways, right? This one's not a receive only. What's kind of rare is in this area, there are still some NDBs, like here at Platte Center. The NDBs are the same symbol, except they're not purple like they are on the visual charts. These ones are in brown. The frequency is 407. Here's it, Platte Center's identifier and its Morse code. Wahoo! This NDB is on 400. The arrow points to magnetic north. So it's very similar. The layout, it's just, less colorful. But that's how you do nav aids. They look about the same. One thing I guess I should mention are the shadows on some of these. Where's one with a shadow? Notice how these boxes here are just straight outlines, right? If you find one with a shadow, that means that the flight service station has the same name as the facility. I don't happen to see one right now, but you notice all these have other, like this is Princeton radio, right? The VOR DME is Fergus Falls, but the radio is Princeton. If you find one that has a shadow, that means the radio call sign is the same as the facility that we're talking about. I don't see one, but they're out there. But that's what it means. So if you don't, like, if this were shadowed, you would say Fort Dodge radio on 122.2. Anyway, but that's a TACAN. We're not messing with that. Okay, so that pretty much does it for nav aids and their info boxes. All these lines, you probably figured out, are the highways in the sky, right? Let's go back to, where are we here? We're in Minneapolis. Each of these little triangles are the intersections along the route, right? Here, this is Victor 148. Each of these triangles are intersections. They are identified in different ways. For instance, these white arrows that are offset slightly give you the distance to that intersection from the nav aid, right? This one is 19 from the Redwood Falls VOR on the 054 radial. Now, COMOS can be identified two ways then, right? If you have DME or an IFR approved GPS, you can identify COMOS by 19 miles on the 054 radial, or you can identify it on the 197 radial from the Darwin VORTAC up here. That way you know how far you are and where you are. Okay, so that tells you the segment length. Here on Victor 148, 2800, this is the minimum en route altitude that you need to fly to be safe. The 19 is the length of this segment, so it's also 19 miles from this intersection COMOS to Wittes here. This little D with the arrows tells you the segment from the nav aid the total length, right? This one's 38. And the FAA can do math. 19 plus 19 is 38. So it's 38 miles all the way to this intersection. You could also identify it on the 160 running through there. This one then is 10 miles, right, from this intersection to Rixey. It's 37 from, which one's this? It's probably Minneapolis. Oh, no, it's called the Gopher. From the Gopher Vortac, right, we're running this way. So it's very easy to see, how to find your intersections, but that's what all these little triangles are. The triangles, though, are intersections for VHF, Vortacs. They're for the VHF nav aids, the radio nav aids. All these little star-looking things, the four-pointed stars, those are GPS intersections. Okay? And the blue routes, the T and Qs, those are GPS airways. So you need an IFR-approved GPS to fly these. Sometimes you will see airways that share, right, like right here. This one can be used for both. Tango 468 and Victor 216 are the same airway between the Mankato and the Hill City Vortacs. So it's 062 radial here for Victor 216. Now, if you notice these two boxes, the total segment length between intersections is 62 miles between here and Risho. Risho is identified on the 35 DME from the Mankato Vortac. So it reads the same as before. The blue GPS minimum en route altitude of 4,500 feet is the same for the Victor airway, but the Victor airway minimum obstruction clearance altitude is 100 feet lower at 3,900. Minimum en route altitudes, MEAs, guarantee navigation reception and obstacle clearance. Then these big old numbers here, a lot like the VFR charts, are the off-route obstacle clearance altitudes, right? The big number is the thousands and the little number is hundreds. If you happen to fly off the airway and just out here in the middle of nowhere, you need to fly at least this altitude so you don't bump into stuff. There is, of course, a little bit of safety margin, but treat this as your minimum altitude. For instance, here on Tango 431, it's 3,900 if you're using the GPS, but it's 4,100 if you're using your standard navs. So pay attention to that. But that's kind of how airways work. It's pretty self-explanatory, I think, once you do it just, once or twice, because the format's all the same. Remember that blues are for GPSs and blacks are for VORs. Oh, here we go. You need to know what this symbol is for your test. This is the VOR changeover point. Ordinarily, you would change VORs, and I think I mentioned this in the VOR video, you would change VORs midway on your segment. But if there is a specified VOR changeover point, that is when you change. You notice this one does not have equal segments, right? The total length is 127 miles between your nav aids, and we're not switching at the, 63 and a half. We're switching here 76 from this one and only 51 miles from the Salina. So when you see these symbols, these are the VOR changeover points. These brown lines are military training routes. The IFR ones are IR and the VFR ones are VR. And the little arrows tell you which way they go. The thinner lines are less than 5 miles wide on both sides, and the thicker lines are greater than 5 nautical miles on either or both sides. But these are where you're going to find fast-moving military traffic, perhaps, so be on the lookout should your path take you across one of these brown military training routes. But you need to know what those are. There is one other thing that they might ask you on a test, actually they almost certainly will, or at least your instructor will quiz you, are compulsory or optional reporting points. Here's two right here, look at this. Notice these symbols, this VOR DME is black. This Vortac is black. If an intersection or a nav aid is filled in black, you need to let ATC know when you pass that point. There's another one over here. These might exist because the radar coverage maybe is spotty or something else, But if you see something filled in black, that is a compulsory or mandatory, if you have some vocabulary struggles, compulsory reporting points. Here's another one here. Otherwise, see all these intersections and nav aids. Here's 2 more compulsory reporting points. There's one there. But you need to let ATC know when you cross those points if it is filled in black. I don't see any intersections right now that are filled in black, but they are absolutely out there. Lots of nav aids are, especially out west. Okay, and then the last thing, you might occasionally use an ILS feather to identify an intersection or something else. So let's go back in here to our Omaha zone. This is the POTS NDB, right? But it's also an intersection as, right, POTS right here. There's a little triangle coincident with the NDB. But you notice here there is this little DME marker pointing to POTS. So you can use this ILS feather, 1099, to identify POTS on the 11 DME if you don't happen to have an ADF. I believe there's another one down here. Let's go south here in Norman, Oklahoma. This ILS feather here coming off of Norman on 111.9 or 5 is used to identify the Ove intersection here off the Will Rogers Vortac. So ILS feathers are depicted thusly. And you may remember this from the instrument approach video. The right-hand side of the ILS is the shaded side. Shaded right, red on the right. Otherwise, you're flying a back course. And we'll get to that in the back course approach video. But that's basically how you read these charts. The blue lines are for GPSs. Oh, there's one more thing here. These, so that you have the dental molding, right? These little Greek toga blue lines. These identify the center boundaries, right? Here is Fort Worth. So if you're south of this zone, you're going to be talking to Fort Worth Center. If you're north of this, you're going to be talking to Kansas City Center. So that's what those mean. And we already went over what these boxes here are, right? This is Fort Worth Center in the Clinton-Sherman area on 128.4. Ignore the higher numbers. Those are for military planes. We've got a military training route here, right? VR 104. Cordell Municipal does not have an instrument approach, but it's 1589 above sea level. We are going to have pilot-controlled lighting, and the longest runway is 3,400 feet. Over here in Hobart, America, this particular one is part of the minimum operational network. That's what that means. It does have an instrument approach, right? It's green, so it's going to be published in the TERPs. And we've got this funny rockin' intersection out here, identified on the 13 DME on the 332 radial from the Hobart Vortac. But every chart comes with the legend, should you ever get confused. If we go to enroute L17, we can go, the legend's going to be on this side. Sky Vectors scanned all these in. And you can see everything you need to know right over here. In case you... we still didn't find one of these, did we? Well, the one with the shaded, with the shadow on it. But here's what all this stuff means over on the side, should you need to know. But stuff you're definitely going to need to know for your test. But I definitely recommend you go over to Sky Vector and you play around with this a little bit. It's an awful lot of fun, and you can go plan your dream flights. So those are the things that you need to know about IFR charts. I know it was a lot longer than a typical video, but I wanted to make sure to cover things adequately. Now, if you want a lot more information, I'd recommend the FAA's Aeronautical Chart Guide. It contains everything you could possibly want to know about all types of charts. I've gone through it several times, and I feel I'm always learning something new. But go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. That'll certainly help me out, as will leaving a bunch of comments down below and engaging in lively discussions. And thanks for staying with me on 121 Point Mike.